Welcome back, everyone. This is Dave from Corman Productions, here to do another rewatch video of Quantum Leap, Season 3, Episode 1, titled The Leap Home Part 1, the season premiere of Season 3. The episode's description reads as follows. Sam leaps into himself as a 16-year-old boy to help his high school basketball team win the championship. He also tries to help the other members of his family, including his father, who died from smoking, his brother, who was killed in Vietnam, and his sister, who married an abusive alcoholic. The episode was directed by Joe Napolitano, his third of the series. His last directed episode was Sea Bride. He is 3 for 3 directing thus far. The episode was written by Donald P. Belzerio, and once again, he gets sole writing credit on this one. The episode takes place on November 25th, 1969, and originally aired on September 28th, 1990. According to owlsplace.com, this episode won a few awards. One for Best Makeup, which includes the team of Jeremy Swan, Douglas D. Kelly, Gerald Quist, and Michael Mills. In addition to that, Michael Watkins, who served as director on more than a few episodes, and was the director of photography for this episode, won his second consecutive Emmy for both parts of The Leap Home. Before going any further, I will tell you a couple of things. 1. This is not a spoiler-free video, so if you haven't yet watched this episode, I highly recommend you go and check it out before watching my video. Secondly, if you like this video and want to support the channel, please like, share, and comment, as well as subscribing to my channel. A funny thing happened as I was working my way through Season 2 of this show. I discovered that there are actually quite a few shows in Season 2 that I either straight up didn't like or found mediocre. To the point where a longtime fan of the channel, well, really not so long term, more like short term, because, really I haven't been doing these videos for too long, but that's kind of besides the point. Big fan of the channel, Ashley Wright, asked me just how many episodes of this series did I actually like. Well, looking through the titles of Season 3, there are only 4 episodes that I am iffy about going into this season, and those 4 episodes can improve upon rewatch. Season 3 is where a lot of my favorite episodes of the series are, including this one. This one is another absolute classic, and guess what? Next week is also an absolute classic of the series. I'm going to cover the next 3 episodes or so, and then do these videos on a bi-weekly basis, mixed in with my This Is Us rewatch content, before, of course, covering the new revival series of Quantum Leap, which, regardless of whether I like the new series or not, I will be watching, and I will be covering it here at Corman Productions. This is set to begin airing in September, and I could not be more excited. Sam leaps in and finds himself in a cornfield. He pretends to shoot some pheasants, and then is asked by a young female voice if he managed to get any. It turns out that this is someone that Sam knows, a cheerleader named Lisa. Lisa wants to know if Sam is taking anybody to the dance after the game, and Sam responds by running. They think it's because he's shy, and that level of shyness is ridiculous. But there's more to it than that. He's just realized who and where he's leapt into. He runs home and sees his mirror image, which is played by Adam Logan, who it turns out also played a young Sam Beckett in Genesis, the pilot episode of the series. He's also credited with appearing as Sam in the Season 3 finale Shock Theater, but I'm pretty sure that is just archive footage. The door opens to reveal his mother. All he can do is stare in shock and mouth the words, "Mom," emotionally. And credits. Stacy, my longtime friend, had asked me if Sam's mom was played by Kay Callahan from the episode The Americanization of Machko, and who also played Superman's father in Lois and Clark: The New Adventures of Superman. And although they are very similar looking actresses, she is not the same person. Sam's mom is played by Carolina Caba, who in addition to her appearance here, acted in a Tom Cruise movie, Born on the 4th of July, has an appearance in Star Trek The Next Generation, the episode in the 6th season titled Ethics, who butts heads with Dr. Crusher, and also in a 2nd season episode of The X-Files titled Our Town. AlicePlace.com had an interesting trivia note that Caroline Cava won the IFC Grand Prize for her short film, Polio Water. She also won a DGA award for the new movie Number 1. All in all, she has 40 acting credits and 3 directorial stints, and is really quite good in this episode. All the guest performances that matter in this episode are pretty darn good. When we come back from the credits, Sam is staring at his mom in awe, and his mother is completely oblivious, talking about his father, who is getting deaf from all the years in the tractor. She finally notices Sam looking at her and grinning like a fool, and asks him about it. She responds by hugging her, acting like he hasn't seen her in a long time. That's probably because he hasn't. When she asks what's wrong, Sam says through tears that nothing is wrong. He's just really glad to see her, and tells her that he will go and get Dad. We cut to the barn where we see Sam's father, who is played by Scott Bakula, who appeared in 5 seasons of Quantum Leap, 4 seasons of Star Trek Enterprise, and okay, that's as far as I am interested in taking that particular joke. Scott Bakula, series star, plays his father here. Totally fooled me as a kid. I didn't know this until many years after the series was over. The makeup job and acting here is really good, and it's no surprise that they won an award for makeup job. Bakula does a good job playing an old man here, but there are a few times when he sounds a little too much like Scott Bakula, which I only noticed because I was looking for it. And let me tell you, for 1990, playing opposite of himself was done pretty impressively for its time. His dad asked him to help with the chores, and then suggests that Sam stayed late at practice to shoot some extra baskets. Sam says he guesses he did. He doesn't remember because he just got here, and it's probably been 30-something years since this day. His father admires his dedication, but he still has chores to do. Sam claims it won't happen again. His father is skeptical, and he tells him that he is only 16, and he can't be expected to be as good as his brother Tom during his senior year. After giving his father a hug, Sam's sister wanders into the barn, and Sam is excited to see her. If you recognize her, you should. She's played by Olivia Burnett, who appeared in the 2nd season episode Another Mother. This is her 2nd appearance, though she is credited with 3 appearances in the series, thanks to her also appearing with lines in the teaser for Another Mother. She was excellent in that episode, so it isn't too surprising that she was also excellent here, and it's also not surprising that they would bring her back. She mistakes Sam's surprise and happiness to see her for a con. She says that Sam can't have it, and as it turns out, she means Tom's room. His father suggests that she let Sam use it until he goes away to college, but Sam willingly gives it up to her. I'm sure the younger version of yourself will very much appreciate that, Sam. Cut to Dinner with the Becketts, and that sounds like it should be the title of a play. Anyway, Dinner with the Becketts is when Al makes his first appearance at the 7-minute and 42-second mark, walking through the walls instead of just appearing through the imaging chamber door. They're talking about the upcoming game versus Bentleyville, which features a player called No Nose Pruitt, so named because the tip of his nose was cut off during an accident. No Nose, according to Katie, wants to kill Sam because he's sweet on Lisa Parsons. Apparently, the whole running from Lisa's story has made the rounds, which is pretty impressive given the fact that there were no cell phones or any such technology back then, because Katie knows about it somehow, enough to relay it, much to Sam's embarrassment, to his family. Sam takes that moment to say he needs to get started on his chores, presumably to talk to Al. His mom says she made peach cobbler, which apparently is very good and almost makes Sam regret his choice. But he remains steadfast. Sam, you are a better man than I. His dad teases him about not having any left by the time he's done, but his mom assures him there will be some. When Sam leaves the scene, his mom says to the family that something seems different about him. Perhaps because he's literally a 40-year-old trapped in the body of a 16-year-old. We cut to Al. He sees the mind-boggling possibilities of a mature man in the body of a 16-year-old. For sex, of course. He's unimpressed by Sam running away from his high school crush. What would Al do? Oops, sorry I asked. Sam, meanwhile, is saying he's a kid again. 16, he's home, and his dad is alive. And Al is happy for him. Al tries to give him details about where and when he is, but Sam already knows them. He mentions the game against Bentleyville. Al says the game is why he's there. Sam hadn't even thought of why he was there. Would you? Apparently the game that Sam's team lost, because according to Sam, No-Nose Pruitt beat him in every way he possibly could, was important to the future of his teammates and his coach, who would have ended up in the NBA if he had won the game. So he is there to win the game. Win the game on Friday, Al says, and Sam leaps. But Sam doesn't want to leap out of there. Al adopts a tone that shows he knows exactly where this is going. Sam wants to prevent his father's coronary that he'll die of in 3 years, his sister's marriage to an abuser, and of course the death of his brother Tom. Al brings up a good point. How do you convince a 12-year-old not to marry someone she hasn't met yet? Here's another point that Al does not suggest here, but there are surely a bunch of factors that go into a person dying from health-related conditions. And facing facts, people don't always operate within their self-interest, no matter how much you badger them when it comes to their help. People are stubborn. Taking on that as a mission for a leap is folly. But Sam isn't thinking with his mind. He's thinking with his heart. Al is skeptical of all this, as he rightly should be. He says, you can't change things that weren't meant to be changed. And Sam comes back with, I can try. Al asks, like we did with Beth? Which Sam clearly doesn't remember based on his reaction. Yeah, Sam, Beth. Even though they both tried, Beth still ended up marrying the lawyer. And I say they in quotation marks because that's a pretty generous reading of the events of MIA. Sam claims this is different. Al and the audience asks, how? The only difference, Al says, is this time it affects Sam. And Sam comes back with, exactly. Does Sam even hear himself right now? That is pretty galling. Watching this back-to-back with MIA is eye-opening. This is Sam Beckett at his most selfish. We haven't seen Sam be this selfish since probably Starcross. The parallels to MIA are pretty strong here. Not sure if it's intentional, but it works. Just like in MIA with Al, I find it impossible to judge Sam's actions here. If you were in his shoes, and I'm asking the exact same question I asked back in MIA of Al, wouldn't you do exactly the same thing? Of course you would. However, Sam's action here only heightens Sam's hypocrisy in MIA. Watching that episode and then watching this scene makes it really hard not to be mad at Sam here. Sam thinks he's being rewarded. Al starts to tell him what Ziggy thinks, and Sam is less than moved. He doesn't give a damn what Ziggy thinks. Big surprise there. He has a chance to change the lives of the people he loves for the better. If Al had the same opportunity, wouldn't he take it? You know, I have this sinking feeling that he would indeed. Cut to the next morning, his father says good morning to him and asks about his cigarettes, which Sam claims to have no knowledge of, and tries to prepare a healthier breakfast with decaf coffee, all of which his father objects to. He argues with his father about his health habits, and this felt like a very real conversation that would happen at any table, without the time-traveling leaping from life to life thing, of course. And once again, I say that people do not do what's in their best interests sometimes, no matter how much you badger them. So this is not going to work. Does that mean you shouldn't try? No, I don't think I'm saying that. But it's not going to work either way. He impresses his mom, who thinks Sam could be a doctor. His sister Katie is now in the room with a hippie-like t-shirt that her mother wants her to take off because she is not going to school dressed like that. But of course, she's not going to school at all because it's Thanksgiving vacation. Meanwhile, Sam brings up his dad's death. I don't know any other way that's less awkward to say that, but there we go. His dad died at a young age, and he doesn't want the same for his father. He wants his father to start exercising more, eating healthier, and to stop smoking, so he won't die in 3 years. The only thing that Sam succeeds at here is irritating the crap out of his dad. His dad goes to the store to replace the missing cigarettes. His sister goes to change, and his mother just straight up asks him, "What did you do with the cigarettes, Sam?" I absolutely adore Sam's mom. She's no fool, and I love that she waits till everyone leaves to call Sam out. Sam doesn't lie to his mother. He tells her the truth. His mom tells him that it's just a waste of money, but Sam continues to argue his case. In a concession to him, she suggests she will try cooking healthier meals, and that makes Sam very happy. But she doesn't want to hear anything more about how young Sam's father's dad was when he died. Sam's dad is well aware of that. Sam, appropriately chagrined, tells his mother, "Yes, ma'am." Funny how quickly we fall into old roles. Al appears and Sam is excited that he's gonna save their futures. Al doesn't give him the odds and simply tells Sam that he hopes so, and that he needs to go to practice. Sam is all like, "I'm not going." And Al asks, "Why not? Don't you want to see the old buddies?" This seems to convince Sam, but he refuses to play in the game on Friday. "Why not?" Al asks. And Sam replies, "Because he doesn't want to leap." And then Al asks, "Well, does that mean you don't believe that you're really here to help your family?" Sam says that he believes he is. And then Al asks, "Then why are you worried about leaping if you win the game?" Because deep down, Sam knows this is not why he's really here. Cut to practice, where we have the coach played by Mick Scriba, who starred in the movie Conspiracy Theory, The Negotiator, and Wild Wild West. He had 95 credits before dying on June 15th, 2018 at the age of 70. Lisa, Sam's crush who is in the scene during which they exchange flirtatious looks, is played by Mia Liz Kuhnholm. She only has 6 credits to her name, having also appeared in the movie The Outsiders and an episode of Miami Vice. The coach gathers them around to tell them that they are pretty good against each other, but they aren't going to be playing each other on Friday. No, they're going to go up against No-Nose Pruitt that Friday. So he's bringing in someone uglier and more intimidating to play against. He's a guy wearing a wolf mask, and Sam feels like he knows the guy somehow, but he doesn't know how. He plays against him and gets his butt handed to him, and eventually realizes with excitement that it's his brother Tom. Tom Beckett is played by David Newsom, and this is his second acting role. He appeared in an episode of China Beach in 1989 before going on to star in these 2 episodes. You wouldn't know that because he is damn good in the role, with plenty of charisma to burn. A couple of off moments here and there, but mostly very good. He appears here and in the very next episode. In addition to that, he made an appearance in one of my favorite movies, Kiss Kiss Bang Bang, with Robert Downey Jr. and Val Kilmer. His most recent appearance was in the movie Coda, the most recent Oscar winner, which happens to co-star Marlee Matlin, a deaf actress who I remember from The West Wing. He has 45 acting credits, and these days seems to be more of a producer. Sam and Tom go shooting pheasants together. Sam doesn't waste any time trying to save his brother's life by convincing him not to go to Vietnam. This goes about as well as his conversation with his dad did. Not at all. This scene is one that contains the most off notes in David Newsom's performance. He isn't that great at the yelling scenes. Sam ends up telling him that he's a time traveler and knows the future as a means to convince Tom not to go to Vietnam. And he does this by predicting exactly how Tom's shooting at pheasants is going to go. We cut to a scene with the family that includes Sam's father, Tom, his mother, and Dr. Berger, who thinks the whole time traveling thing is something Sam made up to cope with the stress of being 16, a genius, and trying to decide which colleges to go to, not to mention trying to win the game against Bentleyville on Friday. He suggests playing along with the fantasy. Dr. Berger is played by Niles Brewster with 19 acting credits, including one on Ally McBeal. He died on July 3rd, 2002 at the age of 67. We cut to Katie sitting with Sam on the porch while he plays the guitar. Katie asks Sam about the future words that will be cool, and one of the words that Sam mentions is the word awesome. This is probably my favorite scene for Olivia Burnett in this episode. She asks more questions about the future, and Sam decides now is the time to take a swing at fixing her future, telling her about Chuck and how he will have a drinking problem. Katie, clearly humoring him, says, "Okay, no Chuck when I meet him." Katie asks if he's really from the future, if Paul McCartney is dead, because apparently if you play the White Album backwards, it says that Paul is dead. Sam tells her that no, Paul is not dead. He reveals that the Beatles split up, which is something that upsets Katie, and he joins another group who comes up with some great tunes. And as for John, Sam starts to tell her that John Lennon died, but Al appears behind him to warn Sam not to. John Lennon, of course, dies from being shot. That's not something you should probably tell a 12-year-old about the future. Instead, he tells her that he will write one of Sam's favorite songs. He proceeds to do a beautiful rendition with his guitar of John Lennon's Imagine, taking advantage of Scott Bakula's singing talents. Katie is smiling at first, but then she gradually begins to cry. Sam asks why, and she says she's never heard that song. And of course not. It hasn't been written yet. And that is exactly the problem. She doesn't want to believe Sam. Because if it's true, then Tom is gonna die in Vietnam. Dean Stockwell's reaction shots in the scene don't quite work. The bug-eyed thing he's doing here is a little goofy. I think the director should have gone with something else there. But otherwise, this is a superb scene. Sam's mother comes out and asks why Katie is crying. She says to her mother that she doesn't want Tom to die. Her husband comes out and she tells John, Sam's father, that Sam told her that Tom was going to die. Sam tries to protest, but he doesn't get it out. That's not fully accurate to what happened. Al in the background tells him to tell them he made it up. Sam refuses. Al tells him that he isn't changing anything. His dad still dies on schedule, Katie still marries the alcoholic, and Tom still dies in Vietnam. The only thing he's changing is making their present miserable. Eventually, through tears, Sam says he made it all up. He made it all up because he didn't want Tom to go to Vietnam. And then Sam runs. Tom is about to go after him, but his father tells Tom to let him go. He needs to be alone. Sam runs and finds himself winded. In the cornfield, Al tells him, I know it hurts, Sam, but you did the right thing. Through tears, Sam says he always does the right thing. What does it get him? Why can he help strangers and not those he loves? He looks to the heavens and declares he quits, which would be a lot more dramatic if that weren't resolved right after the commercial break. But in the moment, it's done well. Sam runs off more, and Al yells after him. I always find it goofy when Al yells after Sam. My favorite example is in Animal Frat, where Al has a crucial piece of information that Sam needs to know. Dude, you are a hologram. There is no reason for you to be shouting after him. You can center yourself in on him whenever you want. After the commercial break, Sam once again stops running and tells Al that it's not fair. Al, on the other hand, has a different take. He thinks it's damn fair, which takes Sam by surprise. Al would give anything to be with his family again, to laugh with them, to hug them, and to tell them how much he loves them. He would give anything for that. Sam takes those words to heart, and we have a montage of Thanksgiving dinner with the family. And it's a very lovely montage, I might add. Cut to Sam and Tom playing basketball. Tom is trying to teach him the jump hook, which will impress the hell out of Lisa. Sam insists that Lisa is going to marry No-Dos. Al looks into it, and sure enough, Sam is right. Why wouldn't he be? Tom tells him he needs to do an in-your-face move, jump hook, to beat Bentleyville. He's Tom's revenge because he lost to them. Sam ends up asking, how bad do you want this revenge? Would you take a trade? Tom, amused, asks, you dork, don't you want to win tomorrow? Sam is just asking for one day, and that one day is April the 8th. Al knows the exact significance of that date, the day that Tom dies. He asks Tom, if he wins, to find the deepest, darkest hole in the ground to hide in that day. And Tom agrees. Their game resumes, which morphs into the actual game. Nice touch there. The crowd is cheering, the game is going back and forth. Al is ranting on the sidelines, yelling at the coach before saying he feels like Dennis Hopper in the movie Hoosiers. According to alsplace.com, Dean Stockwell and Dennis Hopper were friends. Sadly, both are no longer with us. During the heat of the game, No-Dos knocks Sam to the ground, causing the entire team, Al and Tom, to go to him. Tom tells him to breathe, thinking correctly that he just got the wind knocked out of him. Sam from the ground tells Tom to keep his promise, which amuses Tom. He's helped to his feet. Hurt, Sam goes to the foul line and sinks both of his shots. and goes back on defense, where he manages to steal the ball and run down the court. He takes his time as the clock winds down to the end of the game. His father tells him to shoot the ball. Sam tells his father goodbye as his father coughs, perhaps foreshadowing his eventual demise. Sam dribbles, and dribbles some more. The game ends because he's taking too damn long. Just kidding. But as presented, he's taking way too long and the game should have ended. But that's a common problem within sports movies. He shoots the ball, and in slow motion, it gradually goes in. The clock is expired. The game is over, and Sam has won. The crowd rushes to the floor. Al tells him that Sam did it. They go on to win the state championship, and everything happens exactly as Ziggy predicted. Sam gets held up in the air by the crowd. He gets kissed by Lisa. Al tells him that she did not in fact marry No-Nose. Doesn't marry Sam either, but No-Nose in her future. Well, she will have a nose, but she will not be married to No-Nose. I guess that's good, but maybe not so much for the kids that the two of them had, because now they're not going to exist. But we don't care about them. Sam ends up shouting, asking about Tom. Al checks and gets bad news. Al hoarsely apologizes, telling him that Tom is still killed in Vietnam. Sam looks over at his brother, who's shouting, "Sam! Sam! Booyah!" Sam tries to call for him, but he's interrupted by leaping. How rude. He's still yelling for Tom when he finds himself in the water of a jungle. Tom is right in front of him, dressed for war, with a gun in his hand. He gets Tom's attention right before they start getting shot up. Sam dives under the water, which really wouldn't help against bullets, but whatever, as the unit he's with fires back. Tom tends to a clearly dead fellow soldier. Sam peeks up from the water, and Sam's surprise says, "Tom?" Tom looks at Sam and says, "Damn, magic!" in a line reading that even to this day, I still occasionally imitate. How'd you know they were there? Oh boy! And that, ladies and gentlemen, is the episode. Fantastic start to the season, and another all-time classic episode of the series. Scott Bakula is terrific throughout. Really, everyone is. It's a shame we won't see Olivia Burnett in this series again, but we do get one more episode with David Newsom as Tom. And of course, Scott Bakula will reprise his role as his father in the 5th season episode, Promised Land. Bakula has said in interviews that he played Sam as someone who is emotionally regressed, and nowhere is that more evident than his performance in this episode. That's all I got for you for this video. Next time we will be covering part 2 of The Leap Home. If you like this video and want to support the channel, there are a number of ways to do so. You can follow me on Twitter at Core Productions. You can join my Corman Productions Facebook page. You can buy something from the Corman Productions store on Zazzle. You can buy me a coffee, which is a new way to support content creators such as myself. And of course, you can like, share, and comment on this video, as well as subscribing to my channel. This is Dave from Corman Productions, signing off.